I am Hortense, 28 years old, a marketing executive from Boston. After 14 months of dating Zenobia, I was finally invited to spend New Year's Eve with his family. I bought them expensive gifts and planned my outfit for weeks. Then came that text message 3 days before our trip. What I replied changed everything between us. Before I tell you my story, if you are watching, please subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from. The day I met Zenobia still feels like yesterday. It was at a charity auction in downtown Boston, one of those events where everyone wears cocktail attire and pretends to care about art while secretly networking. I was there representing my marketing firm, more focused on potential clients than finding love. Zenobia stood out immediately. He was tall with warm brown eyes and a genuine smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Unlike everyone else working the crowd, he seemed genuinely interested in the artwork. I caught him studying a small watercolor landscape, completely oblivious to the networking happening around him. "That one speaks to you?" I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. He turned and smiled. "It reminds me of my grandparents' place in western Massachusetts. Something about the light through those trees." That began our conversation, which flowed from art to our shared love of community service to our favorite hidden spots in Boston. By the time we exchanged numbers, 2 hours had passed, and most of the event attendees had already left. Our first date was at a small Ethiopian restaurant he knew about, tucked away in a neighborhood I rarely visited. Our second was a volunteer day cleaning up a local park. By our third date, I felt something I hadn't experienced before, a comfort and excitement that existed simultaneously. I was cautious, though. My previous relationship had left me with serious trust issues. Anthony and I had been together for 3 years. He had even proposed. But 2 months before our wedding, I discovered he had been cheating with his coworker for most of our relationship. The betrayal wasn't just the infidelity, but the elaborate lies and the realization that I had missed so many obvious signs. With Zenobia, I built walls from the beginning. I kept conversations light, avoided talk of the future, and maintained my independence. He noticed, of course. One night over dinner, about 2 months in, he gently asked about my hesitation. "Someone hurt you badly," he said. It wasn't a question. I surprised myself by telling him everything about Anthony, the wedding that never happened, and the embarrassment of calling everyone to cancel. Instead of the pity I expected, Zenobia showed understanding. "Take all the time you need," he said. "I am not going anywhere." And he didn't. Zenobia had a patience I had never encountered before. He never pushed for commitments I wasn't ready to make, but he consistently showed up. When I had to work late, he brought dinner to my office. When I caught a terrible flu, he stocked my refrigerator and checked in daily without crowding me. Slowly, my walls came down. 6 months into dating, I realized I was in love with him. Another month passed before I found the courage to say it. By then, I had met most of Zenobia's friends. They welcomed me immediately, especially his best friend Marcus and Marcus's wife Jasmine. They became my friends too, inviting me to gatherings, even when Zenobia couldn't make it. Their acceptance meant everything to me. Zenobia spoke about his family constantly. His father was a professor of economics, his mother a pediatrician. His younger sister was in law school, and his older brother worked in finance. According to Zenobia, they were warm, intelligent people who valued education and family above all else. "You would love them, and they would adore you," he often said. Yet somehow we never managed to meet. First, his parents were traveling in Europe for 3 months. Then his sister was preparing for important exams. Later, his brother was going through a difficult divorce. There was always a reason why the timing wasn't right. I didn't push it. Part of me was still guarding against full commitment, and meeting his family felt like a significant step. But as our relationship deepened, I became more curious about the people who had raised this wonderful man. After 10 months together, Zenobia and I decided to move in together. It happened organically when the lease on my apartment ended. We found a beautiful 2-bedroom place in Cambridge with big windows and a small balcony. Combining our lives felt natural, easy. Living together brought us even closer. We developed routines and traditions, small things like Sunday morning pancakes and Friday night movies. We talked more seriously about our future, tentatively exploring the idea of marriage and children someday. As the holidays approached, I expected we would split our time between his family and mine. My parents, still living in my childhood home in suburban Boston, were eager to meet him. When I brought it up in early December, Zenobia seemed hesitant. "What if we do Christmas with your family and New Year's with mine?" he suggested. I agreed immediately, thrilled at the prospect of finally meeting his family. My parents adored Zenobia over Christmas, just as I knew they would. He charmed them with thoughtful gifts and genuine interest in their stories. As New Year's approached, my excitement grew. I spent hours shopping for the perfect gifts for his family members, based on what Zenobia had told me about them. For his father, a rare first edition book about economic theory. For his mother, a handcrafted scarf from a local artisan. For his siblings, equally thoughtful items that I hoped would show I had been paying attention to Zenobia's stories about them. I planned my outfits carefully, wanting to make the best impression. I researched conversation topics based on their interests. I even practiced making his mother's favorite cookies, determined to contribute something to the holiday celebrations. I was ready to take this next step in our relationship, eager to become part of Zenobia's whole life. I had no idea what was about to happen. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. They were subtle, but present, like shadows that grow longer as the sun begins to set. The first indication came about 5 months into our relationship. Zenobia and I were discussing our upbringings, and he mentioned his parents' traditional values. The way he said it caught my attention, a slight hesitation, a careful choice of words. "Traditional how?" I asked. "Oh, you know," he replied vaguely. "Family dinners, church on Sundays, that sort of thing." I accepted his answer, but something about it felt incomplete. In retrospect, I realized he was testing the waters, gauging my reaction to what he wasn't saying. Then there were the phone calls. Zenobia usually stepped into another room when his parents called, which I never questioned. Privacy is important in any relationship. But occasionally, I would overhear fragments that left me with questions. "She's different from Sarah," I once heard him say, his voice defensive. Sarah, I knew, was his ex-girlfriend of 4 years. They had broken up nearly a year before we met. When he returned, I asked casually who he was talking to. "Just my mom," he said, tension evident in his shoulders. "She wants to know everything about my life as usual." Another time, after a call with his father, he seemed distracted and upset. When I asked what was wrong, he brushed it off. "Dad just has strong opinions about everything. Nothing important." As our relationship grew more serious, Zenobia began making small suggestions about my appearance. Nothing overt or controlling, just casual comments. "Have you ever thought about growing your hair longer?" he asked one evening as we watched TV. Another time, "That conservative blue dress looks really nice on you. You should wear things like that more often." I didn't think much of these comments at the time. They seemed like harmless preferences, not red flags. But they were the first droplets of what would later become a flood. About 8 months into our relationship, while looking through old photos on his phone for a specific picture, I came across several images of Sarah, his ex-girlfriend. She was strikingly different from me, tall and blonde, with delicate features. I was shorter, with dark curly hair and a more athletic build. "She looks nice," I said, showing him the photo. "You two must have made a beautiful couple." Zenobia quickly took the phone back. "That was a long time ago," he said dismissively, but I caught a fleeting expression in his eyes that I couldn't quite identify. Pride, longing. Whatever it was, it left me feeling slightly uneasy. Despite these moments, my love for Zenobia overshadowed any concerns. He was kind, supportive, and made me laugh every day. When doubts crept in, I reminded myself that no relationship is perfect. I told myself that my hesitation was just residual fear from my experience with Anthony. So when the New Year's invitation finally came, I threw myself into preparations with enthusiasm. I spent hours researching his parents' interests, determined to find common ground for conversation. His father loved early American history, so I read up on the topic. His mother was an avid gardener, so I learned about different plant varieties. I practiced making his family's traditional New Year's dessert, a particular type of spiced cake that Zenobia said was served every year. I wanted to offer to help make it to show my interest in becoming part of their traditions. My best friend Amara noticed my intensity and grew concerned. "You know you're not interviewing for a job, right?" she said over coffee a week before the visit. "Just be yourself. If they don't like you, that's their problem." But I couldn't be so casual about it. Meeting Zenobia's family felt crucial, a test I needed to pass. I wanted them to accept me, to welcome me as their son's partner, possibly their future daughter-in-law. As the date approached, I noticed Zenobia becoming increasingly tense. He checked and rechecked our travel arrangements, seemed distracted during conversations, and spent more time than usual on the phone in other rooms. 3 days before we were set to leave, I overheard a particularly intense conversation. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but Zenobia's raised voice carried through our apartment. "That isn't fair," he was saying. "You haven't even met her. How can you possibly know that—" A pause then. "No, I won't do that. She's important to me, and this is important to her." Another pause, longer this time. "Fine, but I'm not happy about this." When he emerged from the bedroom, his face was flushed, and a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Fine," he said tersely. "Just my mother being difficult about some of the holiday plans." "Anything I should be concerned about?" I pressed. His expression softened, and he pulled me into a hug. "Nothing for you to worry about. Everything will be fine." He kissed the top of my head. "They will love you just like I do." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So I pushed down my anxiety and continued with my preparations. That afternoon, while folding laundry, my phone chimed with a notification. It was a group text that included me, Zenobia, and two numbers I didn't recognize, but assumed were his parents. I opened it, expecting final details about our visit. Instead, my world tilted on its axis. The message glowed on my screen, each word a small dagger. "We think it might be better if Hortense doesn't come for New Year's Eve. Some family members are uncomfortable." I stared at those words, reading them over and over, sure I must be misunderstanding. My hands grew cold, and a hollow feeling opened in my stomach. The message was so polite, so matter-of-fact, as though they were canceling a dinner reservation rather than rejecting me from their family celebration. I looked up to see Zenobia standing in the doorway, his own phone in hand, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. What struck me most was his lack of surprise. He looked upset, yes, but not shocked. "You knew," I said quietly, the realization washing over me. "You knew they might do this." He stepped into the room, reaching for me, but I moved back. "Not exactly," he said, but his eyes slid away from mine. "I thought I had convinced them. That last call was my mother saying some relatives were coming that might make things uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable how?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "What about me makes your family uncomfortable, Zenobia? What haven't you told me?" He sank onto the edge of our bed, shoulders slumping. "It's not you specifically, Hortense. It's just, my family is very traditional. My parents had a certain idea of who I would end up with." "Someone like Sarah?" I asked, remembering his ex-girlfriend's blonde hair and pale skin, so different from my own appearance. His silence was answer enough. Anger flared hot and bright. "Were you ever going to tell me that your family has a problem with who I am? Or were you just going to keep making excuses about why I couldn't meet them?" "It's not like that," he protested weakly. "They're good people, really. They just come from a different generation, a different mindset. They need time." 14 months wasn't enough time, I shot back. The hurt was transforming into rage, giving me a strange cold clarity. "You let me buy them gifts. You let me practice making your mother's special cake. You let me research their interests and plan my outfits, all while knowing they might not even want me in their home." Zenobia reached for me again. "Please, Hortense, try to understand. Family dynamics are complicated." I jerked away from his touch. "No. What's complicated is why you've been lying to me. What's complicated is why you didn't stand up for me in that call with your mother. What's complicated is why you're not standing up for me now." His face flushed. "What do you want me to do? They're my parents." "And I'm supposed to be your partner," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "The person you choose to build a life with." I needed space to think, to process this betrayal. I locked myself in our bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub, trying to slow my breathing and organize my thoughts. The text message kept flashing in my mind. "Some family members are uncomfortable." The politeness of it was somehow worse than outright hostility would have been. In the quiet of the bathroom, I forced myself to face what was really happening. Zenobia's family had judged me without meeting me. They had decided I wasn't suitable based on what my background, my appearance, my name, and worse, Zenobia had allowed it to happen. He had known their prejudices and shielded them from me rather than standing firmly by my side. The pain was almost physical, a tightness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I had been so careful with my heart. After Anthony so cautious about trusting again. And now this. But beneath the hurt, something else was building dignity, self-respect, the knowledge that I deserved better than this from both Zenobia and his family. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. You will not break, I told my reflection. You will not beg for acceptance from people who have already rejected you. I decided then how I would respond not with angry accusations or emotional pleas, but with calm dignity that would make it clear I was above their petty prejudices. I unlocked the bathroom door to find Zenobia waiting anxiously in the hallway. I'm going to reply to the text, I told him, my voice steady, and I think you should know what I'm going to say. He nodded, looking both relieved and apprehensive, as we walked back to where my phone lay on the bed, that hurtful message still displayed on the screen. I picked it up, took a deep breath, and began to type my response. With trembling fingers, but a clear mind, I crafted my response. I wanted it to reflect who I truly was, someone with enough self-respect to stand my ground, but enough grace not to sink to their level. I wrote, "Thank you for letting me know your concerns. While I'm disappointed that I won't have the opportunity to meet Zenobia's family this New Year's, I respect that this is your home and your celebration. I've been looking forward to meeting the people who raised such a wonderful man, but I understand that family gatherings can be complex. I wish you all a happy New Year, and perhaps we'll have the chance to meet when circumstances are more favorable." I showed the message to Zenobia before sending it. His eyes widened slightly as he read it. "You're not angry?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. "I'm furious," I corrected him quietly. "But I won't give them the satisfaction of knowing that, and I won't lower myself to respond with hostility." He studied my face for a moment. "You're remarkable, you know that." "What I am is respectful of myself," I replied, "something you might consider trying." The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take them back. I hit send and placed my phone on the nightstand, then walked to the living room window, staring out at the Cambridge street below. People were going about their normal lives, unaware that mine had just been upended. I felt Zenobia approach, but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I should have handled this differently." "Yes, you should have," I agreed, still looking out the window. "You should have been honest with me from the beginning about your family's prejudices." "They're not prejudiced exactly," Zenobia said defensively. "They're just traditional." I turned to face him then. "Stop hiding behind euphemisms, Zenobia. What exactly makes your family uncomfortable about me? Is it because I'm not white?" He flinched at the directness of my question, and I knew I had hit the mark. "It's complicated," he began, but I cut him off. "No, it's actually quite simple. Either they have a problem with who I am or they don't, and based on that text message, they clearly do." Zenobia ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as a sign of his distress. "My parents grew up in a different time, a different community. They've never been particularly diverse in their social circles. My father's family especially has certain expectations. And you knew this all along," I stated, not a question. He nodded reluctantly. "I hoped they would change once they met you. That's why I kept pushing for us to visit." "But you never actually told them about me, did you? About my background, my family?" His silence confirmed my suspicion. "So you were planning to surprise them, show up with me, and hope for the best?" I shook my head in disbelief. "Did you think they wouldn't notice that I don't look like Sarah?" "I told them I was dating someone new," he said defensively. "I just didn't go into details." "Details?" I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "My identity is a detail to you." "That's not fair, Hortense. You know that's not what I meant." Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a new notification. We both froze, looking toward the bedroom where my phone lay. "It's probably them again," I said, making no move to retrieve it. Zenobia went to check, returning with my phone in hand, his expression puzzled. "You should read this," he said, handing it to me. I took the phone reluctantly, expecting another polite rejection. Instead, I found something entirely different. The new message on my screen left me speechless. "We are so sorry for our previous text. There has been a significant misunderstanding. Of course, we want to meet you, Hortense. We've heard wonderful things from Zenobia and have been looking forward to having you join our New Year's celebration. Please accept our sincere apology for the confusion. We would be honored if you would still come." I looked up at Zenobia, bewildered by this complete reversal. "What happened? Did you call them?" He shook his head, looking equally confused. "No, I've been here with you the whole time." I reread the message, trying to make sense of this dramatic change in tone. My first response had been dignified, but hardly persuasive enough to cause such a shift. Something else must have happened. "This doesn't make sense," I said, handing the phone back to Zenobia. "Do you think they meant to send the first message to someone else?" He frowned, reading the message again. "I don't think so. They used your name in both texts." "Then why the sudden change? What misunderstanding are they talking about?" Zenobia hesitated. Then his face cleared with apparent realization. "My sister," he said. "It must have been Amelia. She's the most progressive person in our family. She must have seen the group text and intervened." His explanation seemed plausible, but it didn't ease my discomfort. If anything, it highlighted that his parents' initial reaction had indeed been rejection, only to be overruled by someone else in the family. "I don't know, Zenobia," I said, wrapping my arms around myself. "This doesn't feel right. One minute they don't want me there, and the next they're honored to have me. I don't trust this sudden change of heart." Zenobia placed his hands on my shoulders, his eyes earnest. "This is a good thing, Hortense. It means they're trying. Maybe they realized how hurtful their message was, or maybe Amelia helped them see reason. Either way, they're extending an olive branch." I stepped away from his touch. "An olive branch that feels forced. I don't want to be somewhere I'm not truly welcome." "You are welcome," he insisted. "This new message proves it." "This new message proves they can be polite when pressured," I countered. "It doesn't mean their feelings have changed." Zenobia sighed, frustration evident in his expression. "What do you want me to do? Hortense, cancel New Year's with my family entirely." "They're making an effort here." His words made me realize we were at a crossroads. I could refuse to go, creating an immediate rift between Zenobia and his family. Or I could accept the apology at face value and proceed with the visit, knowing that beneath the polite invitation lurked their initial rejection. "I need to think," I said, reaching for my phone. "I'm going to call Amara." Zenobia nodded, visibly relieved that I was at least considering going. "That's a good idea. I'll give you some space." And once he left the room, I called my best friend, desperately needing her perspective. Amara answered on the second ring, and I poured out the whole story from the first text to the sudden reversal. "Those racist mother—" Amara began, her outrage clear. "I don't know for sure that's what it is," I interrupted, though we both knew it was the most likely explanation. "Please," Amara scoffed. "What other reason could they have for uninviting you sight unseen, and then this fake apology girl if you go there? You better bring pepper spray for your food." Despite everything, I laughed. Amara had always been able to find humor in even the darkest situations. "But seriously," she continued, her tone softening, "what are you going to do? And more importantly, what is Zenobia doing about this? Because from what you've told me, he's not exactly standing on a mountaintop defending your honor." Her question hit a nerve. Throughout this ordeal, Zenobia had been apologetic but passive. He hadn't immediately called his parents to confront them. He hadn't offered to cancel the visit in solidarity with me. He had simply accepted their behavior as unfortunate but unchangeable. "He wants me to accept the apology and go anyway," I told her. "And what do you want?" Amara asked. I thought about it, trying to sort through my jumbled emotions. Part of me wants to refuse on principle, but another part wants to go and show them exactly who I am, not some stereotype they can dismiss without meeting. "That's the spirit," Amara said. "If you go in there with your head high. Don't try to be what they want. Be gloriously, unapologetically yourself." After talking with Amara, I felt more resolved. I would accept the invitation, but on my terms. I wouldn't try to conform to their expectations or seek their approval. I would be myself, and they would either accept me or not. I found Zenobia in this kitchen pretending to prepare dinner, though he had only managed to take out ingredients, not actually cook anything. "I'll go," I told him. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not going there to audition for a role in your family. I'm going as myself, your partner who deserves respect. And if they can't give that, we leave. Immediately. No discussion." Relief flooded his face quickly, followed by nervousness at my conditions. "They'll be on their best behavior, I promise." "It's not their behavior I'm concerned about," I said pointedly. "It's yours. I need to know you'll stand with me if things get uncomfortable." He took my hands in his expression serious. "I will. I promise." I wanted to believe him. Despite everything, I still loved him and wanted our relationship to work. So I nodded and began to help with dinner, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. As we resumed preparations for the visit, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were heading toward a moment of truth, one that would either strengthen our relationship or break it beyond repair. The drive to Zenobia's parents' home in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, took just over 2 hours, but it felt much longer. The atmosphere in the car was tense, despite Zenobia's attempts at normal conversation. Every mile brought us closer to a confrontation I was dreading, but also in some strange way anticipating. "Their house has been in my father's family for 3 generations," Zenobia explained as we turned onto a tree-lined street of elegant colonial homes. "It's where I grew up, where all our family holidays happened." I nodded, only half listening, as I mentally prepared myself for the meeting ahead. I had dressed carefully in a wine-colored sweater dress that was both stylish and conservative, my curly hair pulled back in a neat bun. I looked polished and professional, a version of myself, but still authentically me. The house was exactly as Zenobia had described, a stately white colonial, with black shutters and a red door Christmas light still twinkling along the roofline. It looked like something from a New England holiday card, pristine, traditional, and intimidating. Zenobia parked in the circular driveway behind several other cars. "Looks like everyone's already here," he said, a note of tension in his voice. I took a deep breath. "Let's get this over with." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "It's going to be fine. You'll see." The front door opened before we could ring the bell. A woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair and Zenobia's warm brown eyes greeted us with an overly bright smile. "You must be Hortense. Welcome, welcome. I'm Catherine, Zenobia's mother. We're so delighted you could join us." Her enthusiasm seemed forced, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. But I returned her greeting with equal politeness, shaking her outstretched hand. "Thank you for having me, Dr. Matthews. Your home is beautiful." "Please call me Catherine," she insisted, ushering us inside. The interior of the house was as traditional as its exterior, dark hardwood floors, antique furniture, and walls lined with family photographs. As Catherine took our coats, I couldn't help noticing several framed photos of Zenobia, with a tall blonde woman I recognized as Sarah. In one particularly prominent photo on the entryway table, they stood with his parents, all smiling widely at some formal event. Zenobia noticed my gaze and winced slightly. He leaned close to whisper, "Those are old. I'll talk to Mom about taking them down." Before I could respond, a tall man with Zenobia's build but a much sterner expression approached from what appeared to be a study. This must be Zenobia's father. "Dad, this is Hortense," Zenobia said, an undercurrent of tension in his voice. "William Matthews," he said, extending his hand. His handshake was firm but brief, his smile perfunctory. "Welcome to our home." "Thank you for having me, Professor Matthews," I replied. He seemed momentarily surprised that I knew his title, then nodded approvingly. "Zenobia mentioned you work in marketing." "Yes, I'm an executive at Thornton and Associates in Boston." He made a non-committal noise that somehow managed to convey mild disappointment. "A challenging field, I imagine." Before I could respond, Catherine intervened. "Let's not talk business at the door. Come meet everyone else." She led us into a spacious living room where several people were gathered. Zenobia's sister Amelia, a young woman with her mother's features and a friendly smile, approached immediately. "Hortense, I'm so glad to meet you finally. Zenobia talks about you constantly." Her welcome seemed genuine, and I felt myself relax slightly. All good things, I hope, I replied with a smile. The best, she assured me, linking her arm through mine. Let me introduce you to everyone. The next hour was a blur of introductions and small talk. Zenobia's brother James and his wife Victoria were polite but reserved. Several aunts, uncles, and cousins greeted me with varying degrees of warmth. I did my best to remember names and relationships, to smile at the right moments, and to answer the increasingly personal questions without showing offense. Where did you say your family is from originally? Asked an aunt, whose name I couldn't recall. My parents were both born in Boston, I replied evenly. My grandparents on my mother's side came from Jamaica in the 1950s. My father's family has been in Massachusetts since the 1800s. How fascinating, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. And what church do you attend? I was raised Baptist. I answered, deliberately vague about my current practices. Throughout these exchanges, I noticed Zenobia hovering nearby, jumping in occasionally to redirect uncomfortable questions. His parents maintained their polite facade, but I caught the significant glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. Dinner was an elaborate affair, roast beef Yorkshire pudding, and various sides served on fine china. The conversation flowed around me often about people and events I knew nothing about. When I tried to join in, my comments were acknowledged briefly before the discussion moved on. I was placed between Zenobia and his sister Amelia, with his parents directly across from us. This positioning felt deliberate, a way to keep me contained and managed. Hortense, Catherine said during a lull in conversation. Zenobia tells us you're quite the cook. Do you make many traditional dishes? The question seemed innocent enough, but something in her tone made me wary. I enjoy cooking all kinds of cuisine, I replied carefully. Most recently, I've been experimenting with French techniques. How cosmopolitan, she said with a tight smile. I've always believed in the importance of preserving family recipes and traditions. Don't you agree? I think there's value in both tradition and innovation, I answered. Some of the most interesting cuisines come from cultural fusion. Catherine's smile remained fixed, but her eyes cooled. Perhaps, but there's something to be said for purity of tradition. Zenobia tensed beside me but said nothing. Amelia, however, jumped in. Mom's just being diplomatic about her own cooking failures, she said lightly. Any attempt at fusion in this kitchen usually ends in disaster. The table laughed, the moment diffused, but I hadn't missed the underlying message in Catherine's words. After dinner, as the group moved back to the living room for coffee, I excused myself to use the restroom. On my way back, I passed the kitchen and overheard voices, Catherine's and William's, speaking in low, urgent tones. She's certainly articulate, William was saying. Yes, but can you imagine her at the faculty dinners? Catherine replied. And what about children? Have you thought about that? I'm sure Zenobia has. He's always been idealistic. This is just a phase, Catherine insisted. Sarah called last week, you know. She's moved back to Boston. Did you tell him? Not yet, but New Year's Eve might be the perfect time, especially after he sees how out of place Hortense is here. I stood frozen in the hallway, their words washing over me like ice water. Despite preparing myself for rejection, the reality of hearing it so baldly stated sent a wave of hurt through me. But beneath the hurt was something else, anger. Not the hot, reactive kind, but a cold, clarifying anger that straightened my spine and lifted my chin. I walked deliberately into the kitchen, my heels clicking on the tile floor. Both Catherine and William turned startled expressions quickly masked by polite smiles. Forgive me for interrupting, I said calmly, but I couldn't help overhearing. If you have concerns about me, I'd prefer you address them to my face rather than discussing me behind my back. Catherine's smile faltered. I'm not sure what you think you heard. I heard enough. I cut in, still maintaining my composure. I heard that you think I'm articulate, which is a common backhanded compliment with racial implications. I heard concerns about how I'd fit into your social circles. And I heard you're hoping Zenobia will reconnect with his ex-girlfriend. William stepped forward, his expression stern. Now see here. No, you see here, I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. I came here despite knowing your initial reaction to me was rejection. I came because Zenobia matters to me and you matter to him. I came prepared to build bridges and find common ground, but I will not stand here and be disrespected in whispers. At that moment, Zenobia appeared in the doorway, his expression alarmed. "What's going on?" Catherine recovered quickly. "Nothing, dear. Just a little misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said firmly. "Your parents were discussing how out of place I am here and how they hope you'll get back together with Sarah." Zenobia's face went pale. He looked from me to his parents, clearly hoping for a denial. When none came, he seemed to deflate slightly. "Is this true?" he asked them. William straightened his academic demeanor, taking over. "Son, we're simply concerned about your future. There are practical considerations in any relationship. Compatibility factors that go beyond initial attraction." "Compatibility factors?" Zenobia repeated, his voice hollow. "Like what exactly? A cultural background for one," Catherine interjected. "Shared values and traditions, similar life experiences." "You mean race?" I said flatly. Catherine flinched. "That's a very simplistic interpretation." "But an accurate one," I countered. The kitchen fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I looked at Zenobia, waiting for him to say something to defend me, to stand up to his parents. He looked torn, his gaze shifting between me and them. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Mom, Dad, I love Hortense. I was hoping you would see what I see in her intelligence, strength, compassion. Instead, you've judged her based on preconceptions. That's not the values you raised me with." I felt a surge of pride and relief. Finally, he was standing up for us. But then he continued, his tone shifting to one of compromise. "But I understand this is all new for you. You haven't had the chance to really get to know her. Let's just try to enjoy New Year's Eve together, and I'm sure by the end of the visit you'll see things differently." My heart sank. He was still trying to placate everyone, to smooth things over rather than address the real issue. He wanted his parents' approval so badly that he was willing to ask me to endure their prejudice, in the hopes they might eventually overcome it. Catherine seized the opening. "Of course, dear. We're all a bit on edge from the holiday stress. Let's rejoin the others and start fresh." As they moved toward the door, Zenobia reached for my hand, his eyes pleading, but I stayed rooted to the spot. "Hortense," he questioned. "I can't do this," I said quietly. "I can't pretend everything is fine when it's not. I won't spend the next few days auditioning for acceptance from people who have already decided I'm not good enough." "They just need time," he insisted. "No Zenobia. What they need is to examine their prejudices. And what you need is to decide where you stand. Is it with them and their compatibility factors, or with me?" The question hung in the air between us, the moment of truth I had been anticipating and dreading since that first text message. Zenobia looked stricken, caught between the family he loved and the future he claimed to want with me. In that moment of hesitation, I had my answer. 2 hours later, we were back in Cambridge, the silence in our apartment as heavy as the snow that had begun falling on our drive back from Stockbridge. I had insisted we leave immediately after the confrontation in the kitchen, unable to bear the thought of pretending everything was fine, for the sake of a holiday celebration. Zenobia had reluctantly agreed, making our excuses to his confused relatives, while I waited in the car, tears I refused to shed burning behind my eyes. The drive home had been mostly silent, broken only by his occasional attempts to explain his parents' behavior, or apologize for his own failure to defend me more forcefully. Now, sitting on opposite ends of our couch, the distance between us seemed far greater than the few feet of cushions. "I'm sorry," Zenobia said for what felt like the 100th time. "They're not bad people, they're just traditional." I finished for him, the word bitter on my tongue. "You keep saying that as though it excuses their behavior." "It doesn't excuse it," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "But it explains it. They grew up in a different time with different norms." "And you?" I asked quietly. "What's your excuse?" He looked startled by the question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why didn't you tell me from the beginning that your family might have a problem with who I am? Why did you let me build this relationship for 14 months without being honest about such a fundamental issue?" Zenobia ran his hands over his face. "Because I was hoping it wouldn't be an issue. I thought once they met you, they'd love you like I did too." "But you knew there was a risk they wouldn't," I persisted. "You knew and you kept it from me. That's a lie of omission, Zenobia." "I was trying to protect you," he protested. "No," I said firmly. You were trying to protect yourself from having to choose between me and your family's approval. And when the moment came to make that choice, you hesitated." He flinched as though I'd struck him. "That's not fair. I stood up for you." "You tried to compromise," I corrected him. "You asked me to endure their prejudice in the hopes they might eventually come around. That's not standing up for me. That's asking me to make myself small to accommodate their bigotry." Silence fell between us again, heavier than before. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white, muffling the sounds of the city. Finally, Zenobia spoke, his voice quiet. "What happens now?" The question hung in the air, laden with significance. What did happen now? Could our relationship survive this fundamental breach of trust? Could I continue to build a life with someone who wasn't willing to fully stand by my side against prejudice, even from his own family? "I don't know," I admitted. "I need time to think." He nodded, looking defeated. "I love you, Hortense. I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," I said, and I did know. Zenobia wasn't malicious or deliberately cruel. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes good intentions aren't enough. That night I slept in the guest room, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. By morning I had made my decision. It was painful, but necessary. I found Zenobia in the kitchen making coffee with the haggard look of someone who hadn't slept. He turned when I entered, hope and fear warring in his expression. "I can't do this anymore," I said simply. "I can't be with someone who isn't fully in my corner." His face crumpled. "Hortense, please. I love you. I'll do better, I promise. I'll talk to my parents, make them understand." "It's not just about your parents," I explained gently. "It's about you. About the fact that you weren't honest with me from the beginning. About the fact that when the moment came to choose, you hesitated." "I was caught off guard," he protested. "It won't happen again." "But it will," I said sadly, "because you're torn between your love for me and your desire for your parents' approval. And as long as that's true, I'll never be able to trust that you're fully committed to our relationship." Tears filled his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's over," I replied, my own voice breaking slightly despite my resolve. "I'll start looking for a new place today." The next few weeks were a blur of logistical challenges and emotional pain. Finding an apartment in Boston on short notice was difficult, but Amara came through offering her spare room until I could secure a place of my own. Dividing our possessions, untangling our shared life, each task was a fresh reminder of what I had lost. Zenobia alternated between acceptance and desperate attempts to change my mind. He sent flowers to my office, left heartfelt voice messages, even showed up at Amara's apartment one night promising he had confronted his parents and demanding they apologize to me. But it was too late. The trust was broken, and with it the foundation of our relationship. I needed someone who would stand firmly by my side from the beginning, not only after I had already been hurt. The healing process was slow and non-linear. Some days I wondered if I had made a mistake, if I had thrown away a good relationship over one bad experience. Other days, the clarity of my decision was blinding in its certainty. Therapy helped. So did the support of friends like Amara, who never once questioned my decision or suggested I was overreacting. My parents always, my strongest advocates, reminded me that I deserved someone who would celebrate all of who I was, not just the parts that were convenient or acceptable. 3 months after the breakup, I found my own apartment, a small but sunny one-bedroom in Jamaica Plain. The act of creating my own space, decorated exactly as I wanted without compromise, was surprisingly healing. Work became a refuge. I threw myself into new projects, earning a promotion that I might have declined earlier out of consideration for Zenobia's schedule and preferences. I rediscovered old hobbies and developed new ones, filling my time with activities that brought me joy. 6 months after the breakup, I met Daniel at a friend's gallery opening. He was a pediatric surgeon with kind eyes and an infectious laugh. Our connection was immediate and easy. On our third date, he invited me to his parents' anniversary party the following month. "Are you sure?" I asked cautiously. "Meeting the family is a big step." He looked puzzled by my hesitation. "They'll love you. Why wouldn't they?" I didn't explain immediately, but later that night I told him about Zenobia and his family. Daniel listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "That's terrible," he said when I finished. "For what it's worth, my family isn't like that at all. My sister's husband is Filipino, and my brother's wife is from Nigeria. Sunday dinners at my parents' house are like a mini United Nations." I laughed, but I was also moved by how naturally he addressed my unstated concern. When I did meet his family, they welcomed me with genuine warmth. His mother hugged me like we were old friends, and his father asked thoughtful questions about my work and interests. It was such a stark contrast to my experience with Zenobia's family that I found myself fighting tears during dinner. When Daniel noticed and quietly asked if I was okay, I squeezed his hand beneath the table and nodded, unable to explain the complex emotions I was feeling: gratitude, relief, vindication, and lingering sadness for what might have been. 8 months after the breakup, I ran into Zenobia at a coffee shop near my old office. The sight of him was like a physical jolt, both familiar and strange. He looked well, but different, somehow more subdued. "Hortense," he said, his voice a mixture of surprise and something like regret. "You look great." "So do you," I replied and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish him ill. We talked briefly, awkwardly. He had taken a new position at a firm in Cambridge. He was dating again, though not seriously. His sister Amelia had gotten engaged. As we were about to part, he said, "I wanted to tell you, you were right about everything. I should have been honest from the beginning, and I should have stood up for you without hesitation. I've thought about it every day since you left." I nodded, acknowledging his words without offering absolution. "I hope you find someone who makes you happy, Zenobia, and I hope next time you'll be brave enough to stand by her no matter what." "I will," he promised. "I learned that from you." Walking away from that chance encounter, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. I had made the right decision, not just for my dignity in that moment, but for my future happiness. The experience with Zenobia and his family taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and boundaries. I learned that it's not enough for someone to love you. They must also respect you enough to be honest, even when the truth is difficult. They must be willing to stand firmly by your side when others try to diminish you. I learned to recognize the subtle warning signs I had ignored early in our relationship: the hesitations, the omissions, the small compromises that presage larger ones. Most importantly, I learned that my dignity and self-respect were non-negotiable, even in the face of heartbreak. Sometimes rejection is actually redirection. What felt like failure in the moment, the end of a relationship I had invested in deeply, was actually the universe guiding me towards something better: a love based on complete acceptance, mutual respect, and unwavering support. Have you ever had to choose between a relationship and your self-respect? How did you handle it, and what did you learn? Please share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, you deserve someone who will stand proudly by your side no matter what.